What's up, everybody? It's Liasha, and today I'm going to talk about the beginning of my spiritual awakening and how I experience loneliness and celibacy. So it all started with the dark night of the soul. I was about 27 years old and I was living in Brooklyn, New York. I was living with my boyfriend at the time. He was living with his grandmother, so I was living with his grandmother. And we were sharing a room, and it was very uncomfortable. And I was working 2 jobs and babysitting and searching for music and acting gigs, which is really difficult to do if you're working 2 jobs and babysitting. One day I woke up and I realized, I'm waking up before the sun rises, and I'm getting home after the sun sets. I was missing the daylight. I was working. I was inside of a building working all day, and I felt like I missed the entire day. And I didn't like that because it felt like, am I on this earth to just work all day? On top of that, my relationship with my boyfriend was crumbling. And I started to have thoughts, that I didn't belong. I didn't feel the importance of me being on this earth. I didn't feel that I was adding anything to the earth. I felt like life would go on if I wasn't here. I wasn't valuable. I wasn't needed. I realized those weren't good thoughts to have. So I noticed that I was in a dark place. I noticed that I wasn't happy and I was depressed. But I really wanted to be an artist and I didn't want to work. So I decided to move back in with my mom because I felt like I could follow my dreams of being an actor and making music and not have to struggle to pay rent if I moved back in with my mom. And she had open arms and accepted me back home. So by the time I moved in back home, I was really depressed. I had just gone through a breakup. It was my very first serious breakup. And I couldn't understand, why would God put me in a relationship for 3 years just for it to break up? I felt like that was like a huge waste of time, like 3 years wasted. Why did I go through all of that? What was my purpose? What was I supposed to learn and gain from that? And obviously I know what the answers to those questions are now, but at the time I could not see that. And I was just really hurt. I was really hurt. It was hard for me to get out of bed. I would sit and watch Netflix all day and just eat. I was in a bad place. And for the first time in my life, I joined dating apps. I'd never done that before. And I did that when I was in my most depressed state. And looking back on it now, I know why I did that. I did that because I was looking for validation. I was looking for outside validation that I was worth something because I had just been through a breakup and I also felt like I wasn't worth anything and I wasn't adding any value to the earth. So I joined dating apps. I met my twin flame at this time. And, they say that you usually meet your twin flame when it's time to shift, when it's time to change directions and switch your life over. And essentially that is exactly what happened to me. Not to go too deep into the twin flame journey. I will save that for another video. But obviously, he and I did not get together. It's known as the separation phase. If you're not familiar with twin flame journeys. Anyway, and then COVID hit, and right before lockdown happened, I was fooling around with a guy I met on the internet on a dating app, and I was like, well, I'm glad I found somebody that I kind of like if we're about to go into lockdown, so I know that I could just lock down and hang out with this guy. He was like a buddy. In my eyes, he was a buddy. In his eyes, he saw it a little bit deeper. And so I had to face that at some point. But during this time, I started to do a lot of inner work. I started meditating. And the first thing that I realized just wasn't for me anymore was sex. I just felt like I wasn't connecting with people in the way that I wanted to connect. And at the time that I was feeling this, I didn't know that it was a connection problem that I was having. I didn't know what it was. All I knew was that I didn't want to have sex. I just knew that much. Sex just didn't feel fulfilling to me anymore. And I had no clue why. I just knew that I wanted to stop. So I broke things off with him. And that was actually the very first time that I actively listened to my intuition. I literally heard a voice guiding me in the breakup. I couldn't even have a moment to be like, oh my God, I'm hearing a voice. No, it was like in the middle of the conversation that I was having with him, I heard basically what I was going to say to him. And I was just repeating what I heard in order to break up with him. I'll do another video on that so you can get a little bit more specifics on that, because that was actually a huge turning point in my spiritual journey, just being able to listen to my intuition. And that was the very first time that anything like that has ever happened to me. It's happened several times after, but that was the first time, that breakup. So me cutting it off with this guy, I didn't realize that I was going to end up being celibate for over 3 years. I didn't go into it planning to be celibate. It's just what happened. Any connections that I tried to make, I didn't feel it was important enough or deep enough to have sex with him. I just knew that it wasn't. So yeah, over 3 years I was celibate. And in that time, I really started to pay attention and focus on myself. And I really wanted to understand who I was. And through meditating, I really learned how to balance my emotions. Well, before I learned how to balance my emotions, first I had to understand my emotions. And that was a journey in itself. That took a while. I had to understand why things were making me feel the way that they were making me feel. For instance, if someone's tone is making me feel a certain type of way, I would ask myself, okay, why does this person's tone make me feel this way? Oh, because I feel like they are talking down to me. I feel like they think that they are better than me. And then I would say, well, why do I feel like that they think that they're better than me? Well, I realized that deep down, I am insecure about certain knowledge that I have. So when people talk to me a certain way, I am going to be a little bit hypersensitive because blah, 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 blah. I had to do that kind of work, that kind of digging. Ask myself, why this? Why, until I got to the seed. And then once I found the seed, the reason why I was the way that I was able to nurture it. And I was like, okay, well, I don't have to talk back to people so harshly because I don't have to feel attacked. They're not attacking me. I am safe. I am loved. I am worthy. Different things like that. Yeah, my emotional maturity really came up through meditation and just working on myself and focusing on myself. And understanding why you are the way you are ultimately leads to knowing exactly who you are. It feels really good to know who you are. It felt good for me. I was like, I know exactly who I am. And I'm proud of the work that I have done. Now, the loneliness was tricky. First I felt lonely because of sex, that I wasn't having sex, so I kind of felt that sexual void in a sense, because I really didn't have any problem being celibate. But, sometimes you do want to cuddle, you want to be intimate with people, and I was missing that. I was missing it from no one in particular. I just knew that there was a void from having that, and almost being afraid that I wouldn't ever find that. So that was interesting. I was lonely on that level. I was also lonely emotionally. Going through a spiritual awakening, especially going through the dark night of the soul, you feel like you're not able to relate to anyone. You can't relate to your friends. You can't relate to your family. No one knows what you're talking about. There were moments when I would wake up and I had certain dreams or visions in my meditations, and I would try to speak to my family about what it was that I saw, what messages that I received, and we just couldn't connect. I probably sounded like a crazy person. And I'm just thankful that they held space for me and listened to me and told me that everything was going to be all right, even though they didn't know what the hell I was talking about. But I was very lonely on that level, feeling like I had no one to talk to. And because it was during the pandemic, I linked up with a few meditation groups. I've met a few people online, and that helped, but it was still a disconnect because those groups didn't last long. They would always fall apart for some reason. And so I was definitely lonely in that area. Lonely because of a lack of intimacy, and lonely because of a lack of an emotional connection. And as I continued to do the work, I did a lot of work on myself. I watched tons of videos, did tons of research, read tons of books. And I was feeling a lot better. And I thought I was good. I thought I was over it. I thought I was over my loneliness. I thought I was ready to jump back out in the world. So I got on the dating apps again. And I had a conversation. I was really picky this time about who I was going to connect with. And I started a connection with this man. He was like 40 or 41, and he had just gone through a divorce. And we had a nice conversation. And then one day he just suddenly like unmatched with me. And I didn't know why. And I took it personally. I know now that clearly it wasn't me. And honestly, I did know then. I did know then that it wasn't me. But it still hurt. I still felt it. And that's when I realized, wow, I am still lonely. I didn't really pout about it. I did for a moment. I cried a little bit. But I was like, well, look, I got more work to do. So I continued to focus on myself and just work on myself. And I was like, I'm not going to do the dating apps because I'm not ready. So it's like I'm in it for the wrong reasons. I'm in it just to find someone to connect with me. And that's not really the reason that I wanted to be on the apps anyway. So I turned that off. And I just kept working through it. The thing is, we have a saying, get over it. That's actually horrible. It's a horrible saying because I can't get over anything. I have to work through it. I have to dig deep. Why am I feeling this way? Deal with what is the seed. Heal that so that I can move forward. Because otherwise, if you're just getting over something, you're not really doing the work. And so when something else in the future comes along that hits that same button, you're going to have the same issues. So it is very important to work through it and not over it, not sweep it under the rug. You got to work through it. And I just kept going. I kept going. I kept meditating. I kept journaling. I kept checking in with myself. I kept being honest with myself. And eventually I started to feel a lot better. At this point in my journey, meditation was great. I was receiving messages. I would see visions. I really realized that there is a higher power that is definitely guiding me, through unconditional love. And I began to have faith in that power, in that energy. And it has not let me down since. So I started to feel entirely better. And then suddenly I started receiving job opportunities, because that entire time that I was at home, I was not working. I had no income, but I started receiving job opportunities. I started praying and I started manifesting. When you pray, it's a conversation, and it is okay to ask. Ask and you shall receive. And there's nothing wrong with asking for your highest desires. And you have to believe it. There's a whole way to manifest, and I was learning these steps on how to manifest, and it started working. You have to speak it, believe it, and it will come. Things that I manifested: a home. I wanted to move out of my mom's house, and I did. I knew that I wanted to go to Montclair, New Jersey. I've never been to Montclair in my life. I don't even know why I was like, I wanted to go to Montclair. I guess I'll tell you why. I knew I had to go back to New York because I'm an artist. That's where I want to go. But I knew I did not want to go back into the city, because I had been living in New York City for 10 years and I had gone through a lot, moving apartment after apartment after apartment, and I didn't want to go through that again. So what living at my mom's house taught me was an appreciation for the suburbs. I actually like the suburbs, and I actually prefer the suburbs. So I knew that I didn't want to be in New York City. And so I was like, maybe New Jersey is just across the river. And I was like, well, where in New Jersey do I want to live? And I was like, Montclair. And I ended up moving to Montclair. The money came out of nowhere. Everything just aligned itself. And I'm here. So I manifested a home. I knew at the time that I arrived, I knew that as soon as I moved in, I was like, I want a boyfriend. And after everything that I had gone through, I knew that I was ready for real this time for a boyfriend, for what I wanted my boyfriend to be. And I manifested that and several other job opportunities. I started doing acting gigs. I've only been in Montclair for 1 year, and that was the most acting I had ever done in 1 year. I'd ever done professionally in 1 year. And so I've come a long way, and I'm really proud of myself. Now, here I am a year later, living in Montclair, but 4 years later from my decision to start meditating and start changing my life, and 6 years later from meeting my twin flame, and 7 years later from moving out of New York City and feeling depressed and low. Here I am, 7 years later, feeling absolutely wonderful. I've come a long way, and I'm very proud of that. The biggest thing that I am learning now, how to balance my work life with my spiritual life, how to balance my masculine energy with my feminine energy, how to have fun, how to balance when I do need to speak up for myself, and also when I don't need to say anything, how to balance my energy with other people's energy. How much of other people's energy do I want to take in, and when is it time for me to leave the party, you know? And listening to myself feels great. It's been amazing. And for all of you out there going through a spiritual awakening, wherever you are in your journey, it is always great to look at how far you've come. Even if you just started your journey, even if you're going through that dark night of the soul, you're going through the heaviness, you can still look back and see how much you have progressed. Because I know for me, I would rather be home depressed with my mom versus staying with my ex's family alone. It's a step. Take one step at a time. That's what this is. It really is a journey, and you must take one step at a time, because you keep stepping, you're gonna make it. Thank you so much for watching my video. Please like and subscribe. My name is Liasha, and I hope you have a great day.